Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Well, today we're going to take a look at how to modify lights to work in your village. No matter if it's Halloween, fall, Christmas, Easter, it doesn't make a difference. You need lights in order to make your villages look more realistic. The problem happens when you bust the lights out of the package and find out that they're only separated by a cord or some real thin wire that's about this long in between light posts. If you've got a 12-foot village or a 10-foot village or a 6-foot village, what have you, you're going to need to separate those lights to put them where you want to put them, but still be able to plug them in with one plug and have them work along with the other pieces in your village when you turn the lights on. So today we're going to look at how to modify that to work for you. This is going to be a good one, so I hope you're ready to take notes and lean in close. A lot of folks have been asking for this one. So with that, let's jump in and take a look at what you're going to need to accomplish this. Okay, so let's start laundry listing the parts and pieces and tools that you're going to need to accomplish what we're about to see. First and foremost, you're going to need some sort of a light source. Now, there's 100 different lights that you may have. These are the ones that I use. These are the Heritage Village lamp posts. They still make these, although the box has changed a lot, but the lights are fairly old. I like the way they look. They're perfect for a Halloween village. They're perfect for a snow village. They're perfect. They're lights, so they can't be too bad. And so you can still find these on secondary or secondhand sites, not too reasonably priced. But these are the ones we're going to look at today. And you'll see when I bust these out, there's probably 3 or 4 inches in between light posts. Maybe a little bit more than that, but not too much. So we're going to need some lights. And then in order to cut those lights, you're going to need a couple of different things. One, you can use scissors to do that with. That's easy. You can use these wire cutters. These are from Craftsman. They make them in all types and don't have to have the Craftsman brand, but wire strippers, cutters, whatever you want. These do both cut and strip wire, so that would come in handy. There is a different type that you can use that I found. One of the guys in our Department 56 Villaging Club kind of turned me onto these. I bought these on Amazon. I will put a link to these in the description of the video. These are one-stop shops. You put the wire in, you pull and push, or basically just squeeze, and it strips the wire automatically. You don't have to guess at what gauge the wire is. These are pretty handy. They work on pretty large wires all the way down to pretty small wires. So I'll show you how to use those. You're going to need some wire. All right, so we're going to use wire to extend the lights out. Now, I bought this wire off of Amazon. It is a small gauge wire. I believe this is, I don't really see the gauge on it. I will link this description below as well, but you will need some wire. This is very fairly inexpensive. And you can see that it's a red side and a black side, and it separates fairly easily. I'll show you how to do that. Then you're going to need some sort of a soldering tool. This is a very cheap, it's made by Weller. You can pick these up at Lowe's or Home Depot. Very cheap. I do like it's got an LED light in the front that helps you to illuminate. And then obviously this is plugged into your normal power. Now these do get hot if you've never used a soldering gun before. It's almost like a wood burning tool. I don't know if you've used those, but very similar. Or like a hot wire foam tool, just with a different blade on the front. Now these get hot from here all the way to here, and they get very hot. So you obviously don't want to touch these, and it takes these a lot longer to cool down than it would a hot wire foam tool. And so obviously they come with a little cheap sort of an easel, I guess, to put these in. I bought something a little bit different. This is called a helping hand. And so it's got a place for your soldering gun to sit. It's got a big magnifying glass if you're working with small, details. And then it's got a couple of alligator clips at the bottom to kind of help you hold whatever it is. So it's called a third hand or a helping hand, and it helps you to hold things and solder them without trying to burn yourself. So something like that. I think I got that a few years back off of Amazon. If I can find that or a similar one, I'll link that in the description below as well. And then obviously you're going to need some type of solder. They make all different types. You've seen me use the real thick solder to build the chain link fence on the Creepy Clown display and on the Pennywise House on Neibolt Street diorama. This is some thinner stuff here. And then what we're going to use today is even thinner. It's hard for me to find the start of this. I will find the start of it at some point before we use it. But this is even thinner than that and very, very easy to heat up, and it will work great for our purposes. And then once you're done with that, you're going to need something, because once you solder something, it's bonded. It's going to create a very good electrical connection, but it's not going to be protected from the elements. It could easily short out, and you don't want any of that. So you're going to need either some electrical tape. You can find this at any hardware store, very inexpensive. Just make sure that it's UL listed on the inside. You can see there that this is UL listed. Just make sure that it's a good brand of electrical tape, or you can use these little heat shrinks that I will probably use on this stuff today. I may use tape. I may use one of each so you can see each in this demonstration. But the way these work, if you've never used a heat shrink, these are way, the diameter is great, but they're way too long. So you would cut just a small little piece that you would need and then put that on before, but that's the key, before you solder the joint, and then you'll pull this back over and then use some heat, either with a lighter or your soldering iron or a heat gun, to once this gets hot, it actually shrinks up, and it is UL tested. It's a good alternative to tape. It's a more of a permanent, I guess, solution that it won't come off over time, usually. But you only need a very small piece, so a little box like that will go a long way when you're doing things like this. And then you're going to need, obviously, somewhere to work. Something you're not going to burn your countertop or burn your tabletop or something like that. I use a big chunk of wood that I bought a long time ago for things just like this, and then a crafting mat under that to protect my counter. So pretty basic stuff that you're going to need to start with. So the next piece that we need to take a look at is the design piece. How are we going to design where our lights are going to go? How much wire do we need? How big of the splice areas do we need? So we have to kind of lay everything out and design it. So give me a half a second, let me set all that up, and we'll come back and start looking at the design process on how to do this. Okay, well, as you can see, I couldn't have picked a worse piece to demonstrate this light technique for. And the reason is, usually you don't have lights this close. In this case, this is exactly where I want the lights to go. And I'm powering this, by the way, by this battery box that's got this little accessory plug for the 3-prong adapter here. It just essentially plugs in and the lights come on. Or you could use batteries. Either way, it's the same concept. But I've got the adapter plugged in, and that's what I'm using. The issue is typically that these are too short. Like if you wanted a light, way out here, or you wanted this light to be, way over here where this one is, it wouldn't fit. These are absolutely picture perfect as far as the length is concerned. So we're going to do a couple of things. I don't know that I'm going to cut all of these and fix them, because that would be just kind of doing it to do it. What I would like to do is there's another type of cord that I can solder on this, and this is too short. This is much too short to go from here to the back of the vignette. So I can cut here and lengthen this and still do the whole soldering effect. And then I can do some different soldering on some older lights that I've got to kind of show you the concept. But to cut these just to splice them right back in doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to do that. And hopefully that makes sense to you. So that's how I would set this thing up. I know that I need to go a little bit longer with this one. And I'm going to use a different cord. Let me show you what this is. This is off of a different set of lights, okay? I didn't use those lights, they weren't working, but this cord is fine. And so I can use this cord to replace this big crazy box, okay? And then this cord will plug right into this accessory plug, and we'll light these lights up just fine without that big box being in the way. So we're definitely gonna have to solder that and do those things. So with that, let's get the soldering board set up. Let's get the soldering iron plugged in and get it hot, and then we will go from there. Okay, so we're back, and I've got the box here, and I've got the lights strung out. The first thing we need to do is cut this. So we cut the wires completely off of this box. Okay, so that's the first step. That's the scariest part for most people because this powers everything, but we don't need this because we're going to use this cord instead. And so to use this cord, we've got to do a couple of things. So we're gonna mess with this first. So let's put these lights sort of out of the way for now. We'll come back to those. Now we don't have to do any cutting on the lights other than the two pieces we just cut. Everything else here is going to be fine. So we'll just set those aside. Okay, and then we'll take this cord. And so we've got, on the cord, you'll see some lines, a couple of different types. You've got a long dashed line on this outside piece here, and then you've got some little words, and I don't know if you can focus on all those or not, in this area here. So one of those is negative and one of them is positive. And so in order to have these lights work, we need the negative to the negative and the positive to the positive, or it won't work. And so I want to show you a couple of ways that we can start stripping these wires back and get them ready for use. The first one is with this tool here. This is a wire stripper. This is the kind, relatively cheap. You can pick these up at any hardware store. And you can see that it's graduated as far as the gauge is what I'm talking about. Gauge of the wire is on the side. So this is probably a 18 gauge wire. So if I take about a 1/4 inch and I put this in here like this, I'm trying to make sure you guys can see this. So I put the 18 gauge wire, or the wire into the 18 gauge slot. I got it here. I'm going to crimp down on it and pull. And what that does is it leaves the sheath coming off and the wire still on there. And that's about as much as I need right there. And I just twist it together. This thicker wire is so easy to work with. So that's that way. And that tool works just fine for doing that. It's very quick and it's very easy. Another tool that we have is this tool that I talked about. Now this time we take the wire and we put it into this tool like so. We just kind of put it up into that little area there, and this just fell out just a little bit. There we go. Adjust that. Put that back up into here. Adjust it some more. The only bad thing about this tool is you have to adjust it for every wire, and it usually you only have to do it once or twice until you get it to the right size. So it's about that size. You put this wire into this piece here, just like so, and essentially all you do is squeeze, and when you pull this back out, it already did the hard work for you. It's already apart. All you gotta do now is just twist this end here, and you can use a pair of scissors or your side cuts or your wire strippers or whatever you've got to get that piece ready to go. So unfortunately, we are now done with the wire cutting for this particular size wire. Now we've got to go to the smaller size wire, and I will tell you, it's not nearly as simple. Okay, we're going to take this and set it aside. We're done with that for now. And then for this wire, we've only got to do 2 cuts, but these cuts are crazy difficult to do. That there's only a couple methods that you can do. One, you can do scissors, which I don't really prefer, or you can use these cutters, and it's got right here in the center, it's got a small little cutting spot in there. And so you got to be very careful no matter which way you do this. And so we're just going to put it in and barely touch it, just enough to maybe dig in just a little bit and then pull, and then hopefully create enough gap where we can, if you've got fingernails, which I don't, you can pull it the rest of the way off. But let's try this again. Okay, so there we've got a little bit of wire showing, and that's fine. That'll work. Okay, so this is very difficult to roll up. We're gonna have to do what's called tinning this with some solder. So we'll do that here in a moment, but that's okay, that'll work. I've got a little bit, I don't know if you can focus on that, but just a little bit of wire kind of hanging out off of that. So that works. We're gonna do the same thing for this side. And now we have to do what's called tinning the wire. And what that does is it allows us to place a little bit of solder, especially on these, and we'll do it on the other wires too, but it thickens them up a little bit. It keeps the strands from unraveling while we're working with them, and it helps us when we go to solder them completely together. It provides a little early solder onto the wire that allows it to melt and stick to the other wire pretty easily. So the way we do that is I'm going to try to work to where you can see. I'll put one wire out of the way. I'll get my solder here, where again, we're using the very small. I've got my soldering gun here. I'm gonna try to get it right here where you can see. All right, and then the way I'm gonna do this is essentially just put a little bit of solder. Let's make sure this is hot. And it is, so we're good and working there. Okay, so we just put a little bit of solder onto the gun and onto the iron, and at the same time, just kind of smear that along that line. That's how that looks. If you can see, hopefully it's focusing. It's got a little bit of solder on it, not much, but that's all we need for now. Okay, so we'll get that wire out of the way, and we'll do the next wire, the same thing. Put this here where you can sort of see it. All right, and I may have to use something to kind of hold it down in place where it stays, so give me a second to do that. Okay, close enough, I think. And so now we're ready to do this same thing, just a little bit of solder, and just kind of run that right up the length of that wire. Now this has got a couple little frays sticking out, but I think that'll work just fine for now. And so those are what we call tinning the wires to get ready for the main solder. So that's how they look. I can grab them up here. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully it's focusing, but that's about what we want. That's about how they look. Now those are the hard ones to do. They're so fragile and small. We'll look at the difference on these. These are so much easier to do. And I'm just gonna kind of tape some of this stuff in place so it doesn't move, and that way I know you're seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, so something about like that. All right, so with this, these work so much better and easier. We'll do this side closest to me first. Look at that, that's so easy because the wire is so much thicker, so much easier to mess with. And so we'll put just a little bit more on that one. And that's really about it. Those wires are now tinned. And so what that does is allows these wires, when they go together and we twist them together and we apply that heat, it allows it to melt almost immediately and at least secure them while we're continuing to work. Okay, so now we've got to do something. Now, let me give you a caveat right here before we go any further. I am going to plug this AC adapter in, and I'm going to plug it into this open wire here. Now, anytime you're working with electricity, you must first understand that you have to know the voltage that you're working with. That's the biggest thing, right? And so if I look on the back of this transformer, this power supply, it says it's an operating DC 3 volts. So I know, and that's on the label right there, and I don't know that you can see that. I don't know if it's going to focus, but its output is DC 3 volts. So that's like a battery. It's not going to hurt me. It's 3 volts. It's not going to do anything. Plus it's DC. But before you do anything and plug anything in that's open like this, make sure you understand, because if it's 120 volts and you try to do something like this, you can really hurt yourself. You can kill yourself if you don't know what you're doing with electricity. So I know that's not going to happen with this because it's 3 volts. 3 volts is not enough to do anything to anybody, so I'm not worried about that. But I do have to plug this in to make sure that we are putting the right wires to the right light post. So I've already got it plugged in. I would not touch these together, but I would touch them on my own. The 3 volts is not going to hurt me. Okay, so now what I want to do is, let me put a light out here so you can see if it lights up. There's a positive side and a negative side, and I'm not sure which is which. I'm just guessing at this point because these white wires are not labeled. Remember, positive has to go to positive, negative to negative. It doesn't really matter. You can only screw it up once, and if you screw it up, it won't light up. So we'll put that one there and that one there, and see how they light up? So that is just a lucky guess, positive to negative, and the lights light up. Now, let's reverse that. Let's switch hands. Let's try it this way. This is negative to positive and positive to negative. Notice nothing happens. Nothing is lighting up. So they only work one way. And so that's how you test them. So that's the way they need to go. So I know that this wire here needs to go over here. So I'm just going to hold on to this one, and we're going to work with that one on this outside first. Now I'm going to unplug this just to have it unplugged. I don't need it plugged in. And what I'm going to do to secure these, well, before I do that, I'm going to put this in between here so it doesn't go anywhere. I know that's the part that I need. I want to put some heat shrink on this. And so the way I'm going to do that, this is heat shrink. The diameter is small enough. That is perfect. The length is too long. I only need a small piece, so I'm going to cut a piece off with scissors. I'm going to cut another piece for the other one. Okay. And then this heat shrink has to go on now. And so what we'll do is we'll put the heat shrink over this line. So we don't forget, we'll put it over this line as well. Okay, so now we're ready to take both of these wires here and sort of wrap them around each other, sort of like this. And so one is a very thick wire and it holds really, really well. The other is the little thin wire that doesn't hold hardly at all. And I know it's tough for you to see what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to wind those wires around each other to where they hold something like that. That doesn't have to be perfect because the solder is going to fix it in place. Okay, so now we're ready to solder this together. It's the same thing. We're just going to put a little bit more solder on. So here we go. We're going to bring the solder to the gun or to the iron and just let it drip down onto that, just like so. Just a little bit more than we put on the other side, or the other, when we tinned it. We're putting just a little bit more. I see a little more bare wire down at the bottom. So I'll put just a little bit more down there. And I'm just trying to swipe that up to the top there because I see some lines. And that's really about it. That's about as complicated as this gets. Now, this cools pretty quick, and so we just give it a tug to make sure that it's secure. And once that we know it is secure, we can do a couple of things. I can use a torch, a lighter, or what have you, and melt that on the heat shrink right now, or I can wait to do it on the after I get this done. I think I'm going to do it now. So let me run and get the torch, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the torch. So what we're going to do now is simply bring the heat shrink back over the area that we just soldered. And we're just going to simply get this close to it. And you'll see it start to shrink almost immediately. Don't put the flame on it too much. But you see it sort of start to shrink down there. Heat does this to it. Just a little bit more, and that should be good. Now that stays hot for a little while, unlike the solder cools pretty quick, so you don't want to grab it, but it's in there, it's not going to go anywhere. That is going to protect that line that we just soldered from grounding out against this one or hitting something metal and shorting out or anything like that. So that protects it just like black tape, the electrical tape would. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing now to this side. We're going to wrap these two wires slightly around each other. Okay. Okay, something about like that. Okay, and now we're going to test. Before I solder this one, I want to test to make sure that the light comes on. So I'm going to plug it in just to make sure that we're good. We are, so everything is still connected, everything is still good. Unplug it, and then finish soldering this side here. So same thing. Take this and just a little bit of solder to kind of smear onto that line. That's already melted, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, I see some wires back here is why I'm trying to come in behind it a little bit. Okay, honestly, that's probably good. So we'll give it a little tug. That's not going to go anywhere. We'll bring our heat shrink up over the top of it. Let's get this to pull down just a little bit like so. That's about what we want. Okay, and now we will do the same thing. Okay, I don't know that you can see it, but it is slowly but surely shrinking. And the key is to go sort of all around top and bottom. Okay, that's pretty good. Again, that's going to be hot, so we're going to let that cool off. But what we can do is we can plug our lights back in while that's happening and check to make sure that we're still good. And you see the lights now are on. So we've got all four of our lights up and running. So all of those are good, no issues there. And so we can unplug this. And then this one is done. We can take this one now and set it aside. That is a complete solder joint. Now, if you wanted to make sure that this doesn't move at all, you can take another piece of tape and just kind of wrap it around these two, and then wrap that around a couple of times to where it's secure, just like that. And then that is now secure, and that's not going anywhere. And then this will run out the back of the vignette. These will sit in their designated spots, and this will plug into an AC adapter, and we've got lights on that vignette. So that's the lights for the vignette. That was the easy one because it was just one area to cut and solder. Let's take a look now if it becomes a little more complicated and we have to add some wire using this line here. So let's switch this stuff out and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back and I've got a couple old lights that have already been cut. I've got the lights here, and you can see that this was the end light. It's only got one set of wires coming out. This was a middle light. It's got two sets coming out. And so I want to connect these together, but I want them to be on this battery box, okay? And I'm going to have to use, obviously, extra wire in order to do that. So let's say I want this to sit in the back of the diorama, and then I want this to come through to the front of the diorama. So I'm going to need, let's just say it's, I don't know, about that length of cord in order to do that. So I'm just going to cut this with some scissors right now. Okay, so that's one piece of cord that I'm going to use from here to this light. And then I want the lights to be about this far apart as well. So I'm going to cut another piece of wire to that length. Now, obviously in the design phase, we would set it up like we did before to know exactly where our lights needed to sit. And then we would measure this wire according to that design so we could get our lights lined up exactly where we want them. So now we're going to go through the exact same process of exposing the wire, tinning the wire, and then starting the soldering process. So for these wires, you just basically pull those apart like so. They're so easy. This wire is pretty easy to work with. It's incredibly easy to work with. And so it just kind of rips apart like that. Same with this one. The thicker wire is so much easier to work with. Where you get into the difficulty with any of this is this little thin white wire. It is so thin and so delicate that it's very difficult to work with. Okay, so you've seen me use this tool before, but I'm going to use it again because it's so simple. So what we're going to do first is just simply solder one of those wires to here. It doesn't really matter if we try to figure out which is positive and which is negative. It doesn't make a difference here. It will once we start plugging lights in. So all we're going to do here is simply wrap wire around the one at a time. Now we're not going to put heat shields on these. I'm going to show you how to do this with electrical tape, which will be just as simple. So if you don't have the heat shield, you have electrical tape, you can use that. So we're going to solder this into place. Okay, that should be plenty sufficient. Okay, let's get this one set up the same way. Just trying to get these wrapped around each other here. Sometimes easier said than done when it's in this little tight space, but I think we're all right. Okay, so about like so. That's okay. Now we're going to solder those into place. That should be plenty there. Okay. Not a great solder job on that one, but it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so that is that. Now, to secure these, the way we're going to do that right now is we're going to take some of this electrical tape and we're just going to wrap it around one of these, just like so. Fold it over on itself. Fold it over one more time. Bring this one into play. Just like so. Fold it over top of here. And over top of here and tighten it. Okay, so that is the first piece done. Okay, so now we need to test the lights. So in order to do that, I'm going to throw some batteries in here, and it tells you which way to do that here. So the batteries are going to go in like so and like so. This top is going to go back on, and then we're going to slide this switch on. Bring this off to the side a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to bring our first light that is a double light. Okay, I've got two wires coming this way, and so hopefully, let me kind of tape this down where you can see what's going on again. Okay, so we're just going to simply touch two wires together and see if the light comes on. If we do, we've got well, I'll just let go, so I'm not sure which is which, but it doesn't matter. We're gonna go wires to wires, and we get no lights. So hopefully, if we do this, we get lights. Okay, so see how the lights are on? So that's the only way that that'll work. So I know that this wire now goes to this piece. And so simply, I'm going to just wrap these wires around each other, just like so. Okay. And, wow, the wires are starting to fray all over the place. It's so small and insignificant. So I'm going to turn the battery pack, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to solder these. Okay, got a big gob of solder on there, which doesn't help anything either. Okay, so there, get that big mess off of there. Okay, that should be fine for that. Okay, now then, we'll do the same thing over here. You should see these light up, and they do. I'm gonna twist this, it's starting to fray again because they're so, even with the tinning on there, it doesn't do a great job. Okay, so same thing, not a great connection, but the lights are on and that's good. So we're going to solder these in place. Okay, that's probably good there. There. So here's our next set of lights. And again, we've got one or two ways to do this, right? We either guess correctly or we guess incorrectly. The batteries are still on and we guess correctly. You see that light is flashing. It's because it's a bad connection, but it's at least connected. Okay, so now I know that this one goes here. So we're just gonna twist these around just like so. Okay, so there you have it. We have unplugged the soldering gun. We've got the box, we've got the batteries, and we've got all the lights that are absolutely working. So that's how you make the lights that stretch, you know, from one end of the vignette or the village to the next. So hopefully that helps. Let's see how we put this stuff onto the display. Okay, so here we've got our lights that we just used, and we're going to learn how to fix those on the board. Now, we didn't really honestly measure this for these lights here, so we could be putting them in front of stairs or wherever. So just kind of bear with me on how we're going to do this process. You'll see it all will make sense. But let's say we want to put one light kind of here. So we're basically going to run the wires out the back of the light. Put it where we want it, something like that, and then use a little piece of tape to sort of tape that in place. Okay, so that'll be taped in something like that. These wires are going to come down here, and we're going to do the same thing with these wires. We don't want any wires sticking up or out of place, so we're just going to tape them into place somewhere along like that. Let's say this light is going to go here. We pull both wires out the back of the light. kind of get everything set to where this one's gonna go. Okay, and then again with a piece of tape. Now you can use packing tape, you can use Scotch tape, you can use masking tape, you can use electrical tape. Doesn't really matter what you use as long as it's kind of affixed down and it's not gonna go anywhere. So that's taped down to about like that. And then this is gonna just run straight out the back of the display. This will sit flat enough to where it's not gonna be a bother to anybody or anything. Same with these and same with these. And so now you'll just bring your top piece over, sit it right down on top of those wires or where your display is, where your piece is gonna go, and set it and line it up right. And then once your houses are on, obviously it'll sit down a little more weight, and that's how you line up light. So if you didn't want a light there, we do. In our final display, we're gonna have a light here, 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 and here. But in this case, I didn't want one here, and I may not even want one over here. Just two lights, if that's all you got, you could do something like that. You could have actually, you know, measured it out to bring this light all the way over here, just have two on the end, or however you wanna do that. That's all part of that design and measuring out the wire that you need. This is out the back. Let me just sort of show you that. That's out the back, right? And then you've turned it on, and now your lights are functioning and the wires are hidden and you are good to go. So now you can see your lights in place if that's the only two lights that you had. We obviously wanted 4 lights, and it just so happened that the 4 we wanted lined up almost perfectly. So let's take a look at those and put those on and see how that looks. Okay, so we've got these set up the way we want them, and so they're about the right spots, at least I think. So same thing, we're gonna run this out the back of the display, kind of set that there. We're gonna take some pre-cut tape this time and just sort of tape that down into place. Same thing here, we want this light, all the cords to come out the back. Okay, just like so. And we want that to sit right there. So again, we would just tape that straight down out of the back. Something like that. It'll all make sense once it's set in place for good. Same thing here, the cords coming out of the back. Something about like this. Tape. Something like that. And then last but not least, something about like this. And these cords are not where we want them, so a little more adjustment here on this one. Want a little more cord going this way, so maybe put a couple of pieces of tape over here to help hold this. Nothing wrong with that at all. Bring this cord down, take that back like that. That way you should be good there. It gives us a little more freedom down here. Not much, but a little. And then we need one more piece of tape down here, something like that. That bad boy should be sitting up like that. And then we'll tape, with one more piece of tape, we'll tape that piece back a little bit. There we go. Something like that. Okay, so let's bring over the top piece. Okay, so that's sitting about where it goes. So just kind of place the lights where you want them. Get them straight. Once the houses are on there, they will help to hold them in place like so. So that looks pretty good. And then we've got this running out of the back, which is exactly where we wanted it. And then all we have to do is simply plug this in now to the adapter. And voila, you've got your 4 lights on and operating. And so that's how you design your lights to be able to put them where you want them, to make them compatible with any type of village and any length or distance. It works really well. And so with that, let's then take a look and see what it looks like when it's all back together. Okay, here is the display. Now this is not where we're going to keep this display. It's in the kitchen. It doesn't, I mean, their stove is literally right there. So we would not keep this here, but we are doing an open house for a Department 56 club on Saturday, and I'm going to have that display there, and I'm going to have a couple other displays to the left of that on the counter. And so this is where it's going to stay for the time being. But irrespective of where it's going to stay, look at the lights and how they finish this piece off. They look absolutely wonderful. So you've got the 4 street lights that kind of, help the children see at night, provide a little extra layer of safety, and it just looks really, really cool, really quaint, depending on, any which way you look at it. It looks pretty cool with the street lights. And so the street lights certainly help to make and tell the story here of this simple yet elegant vignette. And so hopefully that gives you a better idea of what those street lights look like. We just got really lucky with the 4-piece. They fit absolutely perfect. We didn't have to cut anything other than splice the wire for the box to go in the back of the display, and you can kind of see that running in the back. If it was going to be permanent, we'd have some foliage back there to hide that piece of fall garland or something like that and call it good. But nonetheless, it looks pretty good. And you see how this piece sits and fits into a corner just fine. So hopefully that helps. Okay, well, hopefully this tutorial was beneficial and good for you to see. The soldering is not difficult. I do want to throw one more caveat out there just for the importance of it. Don't ever, ever, ever play with electricity that you don't know what it's doing. Again, I know that those lights are 3 volts. I know that the output on the little transformer that I was using is 3 volts DC. Direct current, it's like a battery. And so I know 3 volts is not gonna hurt me. If that was 120 volts or anything in AC, alternating current, that will kill you in a heartbeat. So just please be very, very careful. If you don't know what you're doing, ask somebody to help you. But I think you did see that the soldering itself is pretty simple. You've got to make sure that everything is on the positive side, everything's on the negative side. If you don't, it just simply won't work. The lights won't light up. And so you saw how I switched a couple of times, and one side the lights didn't come on. I switched the wires and the lights did come on. And so just know that that's how it has to be connected. So you just twist those together, solder that, check it periodically, make sure it's still working, and you'll be just fine. This is a very, at least in my opinion, it's a very simple thing to do, yet it's a necessity when you buy lights that the cords on them are this long and you need them to be 12 or 18 inches or whatever the case may be. I've taken, and oh, by the way, they come in a set of 4. On Manor Row, I think I've got 8 lights or 10 lights or whatever that is throughout the entire street, and they're probably a good foot or so apart. And so just having them here, here, and here doesn't cut it for something like that. And so in order to do that, you've got to do what I just demonstrated here on this video and this tutorial. So like always, if you've liked the video, make sure you click the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing that. It's helping the channel to grow, and you're getting more good content just like this. And I'm trying to do that every week. If you have questions or comments specifically on this video, on electricity, on how to do anything that you're unsure of, shoot me a note, shoot me a comment. I'll be happy to try to answer your question, and we'll go from there. So again, I hope you enjoyed it. I've been looking forward to doing this one for a while. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We'll talk again real soon.